For centuries, humanity had been at peace. Earth had flourished, growing into a vibrant planet, and the stars above, once a mystery, had become a source of curiosity and wonder. Earth was not alone in the vast expanse of space. There were countless other civilizations, each with their own histories, strengths, and struggles. And at the heart of this galactic community was the Galactic Council, an interstellar body that governed the galaxy. It was a symbol of peace, cooperation, and shared knowledge. The Council was made up of species from every corner of the galaxy, each contributing to the unity and stability of the universe. Humanity had always been a quiet participant in the Council's affairs. Earth had never been at the forefront of galactic politics or power struggles, and perhaps that was why it had prospered for so long. But no one knew what lay just beyond the stars. What dangers, what dark forces were silently gathering in the shadows. No one had any idea that everything was about to change. It all started on a quiet, seemingly ordinary day. The transmission came through Earth's communication network unexpectedly. It was faint at first, like the static of a broken radio, but it quickly cleared. The message was short, its voice cold and distant. Flee or face oblivion. It echoed through every corner of the planet. The message was clear, and it was terrifying. The voice that spoke those words was unmistakable. It was from someone within the Galactic Council, a body that Earth had trusted for so long. The first reaction was disbelief. Earth's leaders gathered in urgent meetings, trying to make sense of the message. Was it a hoax? A mistake? Could it be some sort of test? A game played by one of the more mischievous members of the galaxy? The possibility that such a dire warning could come from the Galactic Council seemed impossible. The Council had always been humanity's protector, guiding them through the complexities of interstellar politics and helping them expand their reach into the galaxy. Why would they turn on Earth now? And why with such an ominous message? Across the globe, reactions varied. Governments scrambled to find out more, but their communications with the Council were met with silence. The few who had received the message first knew that it was real. They had all heard the same thing: flee or face oblivion. Yet the rest of the world was not as quick to believe. Some nations saw it as nothing more than a prank, perhaps a joke from some far-off alien race with too much time on their hands. Others argued that it was a simple misunderstanding, something that could be explained away once more information came through. But as the hours passed, there was no word from the Galactic Council, no clarifications, no further transmissions, nothing. The silence that followed the warning was almost as chilling as the message itself. Earth's leaders were left to ponder. Was this the beginning of a galactic war? Had something happened within the Council? Was Earth now a target? The urgency of the situation could not be ignored. Some military leaders pushed for a defensive response, but the truth was, Earth had never needed to defend itself on a galactic scale. They had always relied on the Council's protection and diplomatic influence. But now, that safety net seemed to be gone. The very group that had promised peace was now threatening destruction. What had happened? What had led the Galactic Council to abandon its role as the peacekeeper? At the same time, experts began to speculate. Was this a warning for Earth to leave certain territories of space, or was it something far more sinister? The fear began to spread like wildfire. Some of Earth's brightest minds began looking for answers in the stars. They searched for any hint of an invasion force, any sign of a hostile fleet approaching. But nothing came. The stars above Earth remained silent, as if they had no answers to offer. The message, for all its weight, was the only thing humanity had to go on. As days passed without an explanation, the fear deepened. Those who had first taken the warning seriously began preparing, gathering resources, and making plans. They feared that if Earth did not take immediate action, it would face annihilation. The truth was, there was no way to be sure what the message meant, but the possibility of an attack, of being erased from the galaxy, was too much to ignore. Meanwhile, the rest of the world continued with life as normal, dismissing the warning as something unworthy of concern. The mocking laughter of skeptics was enough to dishearten even those who feared the worst. How could they prepare for something they did not fully understand? How could they rally when most of the world refused to believe that any real threat existed? But for those few who listened, who saw the warning for what it was, the stakes had never been higher. They knew that time was running out, and they knew that if they didn't act soon, it could be too late. These people formed the first pieces of resistance. They tried to rally governments, speaking of the need to prepare for a conflict that could end humanity's existence. But they were met with resistance themselves. Political leaders and civilians alike refused to believe that the Galactic Council, the very entity that had ensured peace across the galaxy, could be plotting humanity's destruction. Days turned into weeks. The uncertainty weighed heavily on Earth's people. Those who had believed the warning grew restless, knowing that they could do little more than wait. They watched the skies, hoping for an answer, any sign that would tell them if the warning had been a false alarm or the first of many. Earth had never faced a threat like this. Never before had they been so completely vulnerable, so exposed. The stars above, which once symbolized hope, now felt like a cold reminder that something far more dangerous was lurking out there, ready to strike. And then, just as the world began to lose hope, a new transmission came through. It was from the Galactic Council, but it wasn't a message of reassurance. It was a direct order. Earth must prepare to flee, or face destruction at the hands of a force too powerful to resist. The Council, in a chilling twist, had announced that they would not intervene. The threat was real. Earth was on its own. As the message echoed across the planet, a wave of panic spread even faster than before. There were whispers of a galactic war, a secret alliance, and betrayals that had been years in the making. The Galactic Council had turned against humanity, and the very same bodies that had once promised protection now stood as silent witnesses to Earth's potential annihilation. The truth was clear. Humanity had been betrayed. The countdown to oblivion had begun. The question now was whether humanity could rise to meet this threat, or if they would be wiped out, forgotten, like so many civilizations before them. Earth's fate was uncertain, but one thing was certain: the struggle for survival had just begun. As Earth struggled to comprehend the full weight of the Galactic Council's warning, confusion quickly gave way to panic. Governments and leaders across the planet convened in an emergency series of meetings, trying to formulate a response to the impending crisis. But amidst the rising tides of fear, there was no consensus, no unified front. The message from the Galactic Council was unmistakable, but its implications were unclear. Flee or face oblivion. What could that mean for humanity? Why would a body that had safeguarded peace for centuries suddenly abandon Earth to face an unknown threat? The Council had always been Earth's ally, its protector, a symbol of the promise of unity in the galaxy. But now, it was as if that promise had been shattered in an instant. The people of Earth were caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty, struggling to understand how their world could have turned so dark so quickly. Across cities and nations, conversations buzzed with questions and speculations. Some leaders immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and began planning contingencies, preparing their forces for a possible evacuation, or at least fortifying their defenses. They knew the Council's warning was serious, perhaps even a threat. But others, particularly those in power who refused to accept the possibility of danger, dismissed the message as a mere misunderstanding. It's nothing more than a mistake, they said, their voices tinged with mockery, as though brushing aside the possibility that something catastrophic could be on the horizon. Public reaction was split, with large segments of the population either panicking or refusing to take the warning seriously. The social divide deepened as fear and doubt spread across the globe. But among those who were not so easily convinced, there was a quiet sense of urgency, a gnawing understanding that something far worse might be coming. The weeks that followed were filled with tension as more information trickled in, but with no answers. Communication with the Galactic Council remained silent, and every attempt to reach out only yielded more questions. Meanwhile, Earth's greatest minds worked tirelessly, combing through data, searching for any possible clue as to the identity of the threat. Was there a rogue faction within the Council? Had an old enemy returned? Or had the galaxy been hiding a dangerous secret all along? It was clear that Earth had been placed in a precarious position, but what was even more terrifying was the fact that they had no idea what was coming. In their desperation, some leaders began making preparations for an unknown war, gathering resources, building ships, and fortifying cities. These efforts were, of course, met with resistance, as many governments refused to admit there was any real danger. But despite the infighting, there was an undeniable tension in the air, one that could not be ignored. Every day that passed without an explanation from the Council added to the growing sense of dread. And then, just as hope seemed to dwindle, a new transmission broke through the silence. But it was worse than anyone could have imagined. The Galactic Council's next message was not a warning but a decree. Earth was now on its own. The Council, for reasons yet unknown, had severed all ties with humanity, leaving the planet to face the unknown alone. The decision was final. No help would come. The fear that had been growing in the hearts of Earth's citizens transformed into something even more terrifying, an undeniable reality that their survival was no longer guaranteed. Earth, once a proud and peaceful member of the galactic community, was now an orphan in a universe that seemed more hostile than ever. The Council's betrayal was not just a political shift, it was a sentence of isolation. With no answers and no guidance, humanity now faced an uncertain future, one where the only certainty was that the countdown to oblivion had begun. What lay ahead, no one knew. But as the days turned into weeks, and the fear turned into anxiety, one thing was clear: the galaxy would never be the same, and Earth was on the brink of something far more dangerous than any civilization had ever faced before. As the days wore on, the gravity of Earth's predicament became more and more undeniable. The once harmonious atmosphere of the planet was replaced by an ever-growing sense of tension. Leaders who had initially doubted the authenticity of the warning were now forced to confront a hard truth. The Galactic Council, the very institution that had kept peace across the galaxy for eons, had turned its back on humanity. The declaration that Earth was on its own was met with a wave of shock and disbelief. Panic set in across the world as citizens scrambled to prepare for a future they could no longer fully comprehend. The political leaders, once divided on how to respond, now found themselves faced with a brutal reality. They had no choice but to take action. But what kind of action? What could humanity possibly do against an unknown enemy when the most powerful interstellar government in the galaxy had deemed them expendable? Military forces were mobilized, but they had little to go on. Earth had never been in a state of war on a galactic scale. Its defenses were antiquated compared to what might be out there in the vastness of space. While some countries began to prepare their people for the worst, others refused to accept that their once secure existence could be shattered so completely. People in major cities whispered in fear, while those in the quiet corners of the world held their breath, hoping for some miracle that would allow them to return to their peaceful lives. The most difficult part was the uncertainty. There were no clear answers, no obvious targets to direct their fear towards. The Galactic Council's betrayal seemed so sudden, so without warning, that no one could fathom why they had abandoned Earth. Had they seen something humanity had missed? Had they uncovered some dark secret about the planet? Or was Earth simply too small, too insignificant in the grand design of the galaxy to matter anymore? Those questions filled the minds of Earth's leaders as they sat in endless meetings, unable to answer the most pressing question of all. What was the true nature of the threat that awaited them? In the meantime, a select few began taking matters into their own hands. A growing group of scientists, military officers, and former council representatives started working behind the scenes, trying to decode any hidden messages or signals from the distant parts of the galaxy. They theorized that the Galactic Council was no longer the united force they had once been, that something within had gone wrong, and perhaps an internal faction had turned against Earth. There was even talk of a rebellion within the Council, with rumors of an ancient race, long thought to be extinct, rising to claim the galaxy for itself. But those were just whispers, with little concrete evidence to back them up. Fear continued to spread, not just because of what the Galactic Council had done, but because of what was still unknown. Earth's defenders could only stand by and wait for the first sign of a threat, unsure of what form it might take. Some believed that an invasion fleet was on its way, that Earth's defenses were too weak to repel a full-scale assault. Others speculated that the warning was only the beginning, and that a far more insidious enemy, one that didn't use conventional weapons, was already working its way through the galaxy, preparing to strike when least expected. Earth was left with no time to prepare, with no clear enemy to face. Each passing day felt like a countdown to an unknown catastrophe. As the tension mounted, Earth's people grew increasingly desperate. What was happening in the galaxy? Why had the Council turned on them? Why were they being left to face Oblivion alone? And most importantly, how could humanity survive when the very institution that had once kept the galaxy united now stood silent and indifferent? It was a question that haunted every mind on Earth, a question that had no answer, only the cold, creeping fear of the unknown. In the weeks that followed the Galactic Council's shocking betrayal, Earth found itself caught in a spiral of confusion, fear, and desperation. As the transmission that declared their abandonment echoed in their minds, the people of Earth were left to ponder the chilling reality of their situation. Some governments began to make tentative plans, while others still refused to accept the inevitable, clinging to the hope that the message was somehow a misunderstanding, a trick. But as time passed, it became clear that this wasn't a simple miscommunication. It was a death sentence. The silence that followed the Council's last transmission was deafening. No more messages came through from the galaxy's most powerful institution. No explanations, no apologies, only a cold void where there had once been a sense of security. Humanity, once proud of its place in the galactic community, now stood alone. As the panic began to settle into a grim acceptance, Earth's military leaders started to realize just how unprepared they truly were. The ships that once patrolled Earth's solar system were old, their technology far behind the advanced fleets that roamed the galaxy. The weapons they had, while powerful by human standards, were nothing compared to the deadly technology that could have been hiding in the far reaches of space. The question that consumed every mind now was not just whether they could defend themselves, but what they were truly up against. Rumors began to spread of new enemies, ancient races thought to be long gone, perhaps lurking in the deep, dark corners of space, waiting for the right moment to strike. And the terrifying truth was, Earth had no idea who these enemies were or what they might want. What if the Galactic Council had seen something, some threat, that humanity couldn't comprehend? And what if that threat was already on its way? With each passing day, Earth's defenses were bolstered, but the feeling of helplessness never truly left. Humanity's finest minds gathered in secret, working tirelessly, trying to decipher the few pieces of information they had. But even the most brilliant scientists were in the dark. The Council's silence left too many questions unanswered. What had caused the betrayal? What was humanity being punished for? Were they being abandoned because of something Earth had done? Or was it because they had simply outlived their usefulness in the eyes of the galactic powers? As the world's attention shifted from political games to survival, a quiet but steady sense of dread settled over the population. Every spacefaring nation on Earth had begun constructing new ships, retrofitting old ones, and strengthening every military installation they had. But no one could deny the gnawing fear at the back of their minds. They were preparing for something they didn't fully understand. Some people began to theorize that the Council's silence was more than just abandonment. It was an omen, an indication that Earth was now vulnerable to a new kind of threat, one that no one had seen coming. The thought of an alien invasion began to take hold of the public consciousness. Some believed that the Council's departure had made Earth a target for others. those who had always lurked in the background of galactic politics. Others whispered of a secret war being waged among the stars, one that Earth had unknowingly been caught up in. The truth, however, remained elusive. Each day that passed without contact from the galaxy felt like another step toward an unknowable disaster. The reality of their isolation began to set in. Earth was no longer a part of the galactic community. No help would come, and if the worst were to happen, humanity would be left to fight alone. Despite the preparation, the fear continued to grow. What would it take for humanity to truly understand the danger that awaited them? Was there a greater power beyond the Galactic Council, one that had decided to silence Earth for good? And perhaps most importantly, if Earth was truly on its own, could humanity survive long enough to even defend itself? As the world waited, the answer to those questions hung in the air, unanswered, yet growing more pressing with each passing moment. As Earth continued to brace for an uncertain future, whispers of what lay ahead became louder and more insistent. The fear that had once been a vague, distant feeling now gripped every corner of society. Earth's leaders, having exhausted every possible avenue for answers, turned inward, trying desperately to find some solution in the face of mounting pressure. The world's military forces worked tirelessly, constructing defenses, building ships, and bolstering their resources, but nothing seemed enough. How could they possibly defend against something they didn't even understand? Rumors of dark forces, long-hidden alien civilizations, and rogue factions within the Galactic Council seemed to take root in the public's imagination. But the more they speculated, the less they seemed to know. Despite their best efforts, humanity could only prepare for the worst without any clear sense of what that worst might be. Then, one fateful day, as tensions reached a breaking point, a new transmission arrived. Unlike any that had come before, it was not a message from the Galactic Council, but from a rogue group within it, a faction that had seen the dangerous path the Council was taking and refused to be part of it. This group, calling itself the Voice of the Forgotten, revealed a truth that would shake humanity to its core. They explained that the Galactic Council's abandonment of Earth was not random, nor was it born out of spite. Instead, Earth had unknowingly become a pawn in a much larger cosmic game, a game being played by forces far beyond their comprehension. The Council, they claimed, had been manipulated by an ancient entity, an intelligence so vast and powerful that it had been influencing the course of galactic politics for millennia. This entity, known only as the Watcher, had been watching Earth from the shadows, intrigued by its potential. The Watcher, however, saw humanity as a wild card, a species that could either disrupt the balance of power or become an unstoppable force. And for that reason, Earth had been deemed a threat, a risk that the Galactic Council could no longer afford to ignore. The Voice of the Forgotten warned that the true enemy of humanity wasn't just the Galactic Council, it was the Watcher itself. This being, it seemed, had the power to manipulate the fabric of reality itself, to twist and bend the very laws of space and time. The Watcher had placed Earth in a position where it could either collapse under its own weight or rise to become a force that could shake the galaxy to its foundations. And the Galactic Council, once a guardian of peace, had become a puppet to this ancient force, following its orders without question. The Voice's transmission revealed the true purpose of the Council's betrayal. They had not left Earth because of its actions, but because they were forced to abandon it to the Watcher's influence. Earth, in its current state, was an anomaly, a potential spark in the universe that could ignite something far more dangerous than even the most powerful galactic fleet could handle. This revelation hit Earth's leaders like a thunderclap. The very survival of humanity was at stake, not just against the Council's betrayal, but against an ancient and seemingly invincible force that had been shaping the galaxy for eons. But as the truth settled in, it also sparked a new kind of determination. The Voice of the Forgotten, despite their warnings, also offered a glimmer of hope. There was a way to fight back, they claimed, a way to sever the Watcher's control over the galaxy. But it would require humanity to do the impossible, unite across all nations, overcome their internal divisions, and use the technology that had once been dismissed as fantasy to turn the tide. The very tools the Council had tried to keep hidden from humanity could be their salvation. Humanity had a chance, but it would require them to face the unknown and venture into the heart of the galaxy, into the very domain of the Watcher. The decision now lay in Earth's hands: to remain divided and face certain annihilation, or to come together as one force, united by the common goal of survival and revenge. The weight of that decision pressed down on every leader, every citizen. There was no going back now. Earth's fate was in motion, and whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same again. As the gravity of the situation fully dawned on Earth's leaders, a profound shift began to occur in every corner of society. What had once been a fragmented planet, divided by national borders and differing ideologies, now had a singular focus: survival. The revelation of the Watcher's existence and its hold over the Galactic Council galvanized humanity into action. No longer were they just Earthlings. They were a united force standing against an enemy far more ancient and powerful than anything they had ever faced. The first steps toward unity were difficult. Old rivalries resurfaced, and old wounds flared up as countries struggled to set aside their differences. But the looming threat of annihilation proved to be a stronger force than politics or pride. Slowly, the nations of Earth came together, agreeing that their only hope was to work as one. In every major city across the planet, people gathered in the streets, sharing information, learning about the threat they faced, and preparing for what was to come. The scientific community, which had once been divided by competing theories and funding wars, now came together with a singular purpose: to develop the technology needed to fight back. Human ingenuity, which had been the foundation of their rise from primitive species to interstellar travelers, became the key to their survival. In a matter of months, the world saw unprecedented advancements. Ships that had once been seen as futuristic became a reality, fueled by the rediscovered knowledge of the forgotten technology the voice of the forgotten had spoken of. Earth's military leaders, too, set aside their differences, recognizing that only through combined strength could they hope to overcome an enemy whose very nature defied comprehension. Strategic plans were drawn up, and resources were pooled together to create a united fleet capable of confronting the unknown threat that awaited them. But even as they worked tirelessly to prepare, a deep sense of unease settled over the planet. The Watcher, though distant, was always present in their thoughts. No one knew where it was or how it could be stopped. It was a being that transcended time and space, a force that had existed long before humanity had even set foot on the stars. The ancient entity's ability to control the fabric of reality itself seemed insurmountable. Yet the more humanity learned about the Watcher, the more they realized that there might be hope. The voice of the forgotten had told them that the Watcher was not omnipotent. Its power had limits, and it was vulnerable to certain forces. It was this knowledge that provided the faintest spark of hope. Humanity's greatest weapon was not their technology or their fleets. It was their will to survive. Time and again, humanity had been pushed to the brink, and time and again, they had fought back, against impossible odds. This new challenge, though unlike anything they had faced before, could not break their spirit. As the first ships began to take form and the unified military forces prepared for the journey ahead, a strange new resolve settled over Earth. It was as if, in the face of certain extinction, humanity had tapped into something deep within themselves, a primal force that had always been there, waiting to be unleashed. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, humanity's preparations became more urgent. The fleet was finally ready. The ships, though not yet fully completed, were already outfitted with the new weapons and technologies that would give them a fighting chance. Yet, the true challenge lay ahead, far beyond Earth's borders, in the unknown regions of space, where the Watcher and its dark influence reigned. A small fleet of ships was all they had, but humanity's resolve was unshakable. They had one chance to strike back. They could not afford failure. The unknown stretched out before them, a vast, empty void filled with unimaginable danger. Yet despite the fear that still gripped their hearts, there was a palpable sense of hope as they prepared to venture into the unknown. Humanity's defiance, their refusal to go down without a fight, was the one thing the Watcher had underestimated. And in that defiance lay their strength, their true power. With a collective breath, Earth's leaders gave the command to move forward. The fleet surged into space, leaving Earth behind. The stars, once a distant symbol of their ambitions, now held the promise of either salvation or doom. As they left the safety of their home, Earth's fate was now in their hands. The fight had only just begun. The journey into the unknown was a tense and exhausting one. As Earth's fleet ventured deeper into the vastness of space, the crew members aboard each ship could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on them. They were no longer just soldiers or civilians. They had become the last hope of an entire species, carrying the collective dreams of Earth with them. The stars outside their ships glimmered coldly, distant, and indifferent, as if mocking their audacity. For the first time, humanity was truly alone in the void, with no certainty of what lay ahead. The fleet moved in complete silence, save for the hum of engines and the occasional murmur of communication across the ships. They had no allies out here, no reinforcements. Every sensor scan was met with nervous anticipation. Despite their advanced technology, the fleet was still vulnerable in this uncharted space. The Watcher, if it existed as the voice of the Forgotten had described, was an unknown factor, a force they could not predict or fully understand. Every system on the ships was calibrated for battle, but what kind of enemy were they preparing for? The possibility of facing something so ancient, so powerful, left a gnawing fear in their hearts. Yet it was this very fear that kept them sharp. Every member of the fleet was aware that failure was not an option. Earth's destruction would be the end of all they had ever known, the end of the future they had fought so hard to protect. But the further they traveled, the more the weight of their purpose began to wear on them. Each passing day stretched longer than the one before, the vastness of space making them feel insignificant, as if they were tiny specks drifting toward an inevitable fate. But even as they moved forward, they knew there was no turning back. The fleet pushed on, its course set toward the coordinates that the voice of the Forgotten had provided. The deeper they traveled into the unknown, the more they began to realize the full scale of the challenge ahead. There were no simple answers, no guarantees. The Watcher had created a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. The Galactic Council had not only betrayed humanity, they had led them into the heart of a cosmic conspiracy, a scheme too massive for any one species to truly comprehend. Yet there was no time to dwell on the enormity of it all. With each passing hour, they came closer to their destination, and with it, the unknown threat that awaited them. For many aboard the fleet, this journey felt like walking into a trap designed specifically for humanity. Every once in a while, they would encounter strange signals, disturbances in space, but nothing they could directly attribute to the Watcher. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to make the next move. The silence of space was suffocating, and the fleet's progress felt like an agonizing crawl. Then, as they neared the coordinates, something began to happen. The ship's sensors detected strange, unnatural fluctuations in space-time. The vibrations in the hulls grew stronger, the tension palpable. Something was watching them. Something was waiting. The ships moved as one, their course now set with a precise, deliberate speed. Every member of the fleet felt it, a strange, oppressive force closing in. They were getting closer to their destination, but what awaited them? No one knew for sure. All they had were the words of the voice of the Forgotten, and a grim understanding that humanity's very survival was about to be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. And as the fleet entered the dark heart of the galaxy, where the stars were few and the void seemed even emptier, it became clear they had crossed into a place where time itself might not work as they knew it, a place where the Watcher could be waiting to see if humanity had the courage to stand up to the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. They had come this far, but they were not yet out of the darkness. Whatever happened next, they would be facing the enemy that had already decided they were nothing but a threat to be extinguished. The fleet's engines roared louder, the stars growing ever dimmer as they approached their final destination, where everything, humanity's fate, and the fate of the galaxy, would be decided. The fleet entered the heart of the unknown with an eerie silence, as though the universe itself had drawn a deep breath and was holding it. There was a coldness here that chilled the bones of every crew member, a strange and unsettling stillness that hung in the air. The stars had begun to fade into distant pinpricks of light, swallowed up by the vast, oppressive blackness surrounding them. The ships, their once advanced technology, now seeming almost archaic in the face of such an ancient, unknowable force, pressed on, navigating through the emptiness. Yet there was no sign of the Watcher, no clear indication of where or when it would strike. And then, just as the weight of the uncertainty seemed unbearable, it happened. The sensors went haywire, a strange distortion in space-time that sent waves of panic through the fleet. The crew's eyes widened as strange, geometric shapes appeared in the void, warping and shifting with an unnatural rhythm. The ship's lights flickered, and an oppressive hum filled the air, louder and louder, until it seemed like the very fabric of reality was vibrating. The fleet had entered a region where the laws of physics itself seemed to bend. The very space around them was alive, and it was here, in the heart of this impossible place, that the Watcher made its presence known. It wasn't a ship, nor a weapon, nor anything tangible they could fight or understand. It was an energy, a force that bent and twisted reality itself, existing in ways that defied all human comprehension. Its power was so immense that it felt as though the very stars were dimming in its presence, as if the Watcher itself was draining the light from the universe. The fleet's commanders issued commands in frantic urgency, trying to stabilize their vessels as the gravitational forces began to warp the space around them. But no amount of technology could prepare them for what they were facing. The Watcher was not just a being of immense power. It was an entity that existed outside the boundaries of their reality, something ancient and deeply rooted in the fabric of the cosmos. It could manipulate space, time, and even the thoughts of those who dared approach it. The fleet's crew felt its influence pressing down on their minds, a whisper that seemed to speak in a language they couldn't understand, but which nevertheless felt oddly familiar. It was as though it was speaking directly to their subconscious, planting seeds of doubt and fear, testing their resolve. In the face of such a being, humanity's hope seemed to flicker, like a candle in the wind. For the first time, they realized the enormity of the threat they faced. This was not just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the very nature of reality itself. As the ships moved forward, they could see it, faintly at first, just on the edge of perception, a massive, shifting presence that towered over them, dwarfing their vessels. The Watcher, though it had no physical form, was something far beyond their understanding. It wasn't just an entity. It was a force, one that transcended space and time, one that existed in every corner of the galaxy. And as the fleet drew closer, the Watcher's voice filled their minds, not with words, but with an overwhelming presence, a feeling of inevitability, as though they were standing at the edge of an abyss that could not be crossed. There was no escape. There was no chance of survival. The Watcher's power was absolute, and humanity was but a speck in its grand design. The fleet's commanders hesitated, realizing that all they had worked for, all they had sacrificed, might have been in vain. But in that moment, something within them stirred, a memory of Earth's history, of its wars, its survival against all odds, flickered in their minds. It wasn't just technology that made humanity strong. It was their spirit, their refusal to give up, their ability to fight back when all seemed lost. The commanders looked at one another, and in their eyes, they saw the same resolve. They would not surrender. Not now. Not ever. and with that unspoken agreement, they gave the command to strike. The fleet surged forward, unleashing every weapon they had, every ounce of energy they could muster. The Watchers' power tried to push them back, to swallow them whole, but the fleet fought on, each ship a symbol of humanity's last stand. For in that moment, despite the overwhelming power of their enemy, humanity's defiance burned brighter than the stars themselves. And that, perhaps, was the one thing the Watcher had underestimated: humanity's refusal to be erased, to fade into nothingness without a fight. The battle had begun.